Well, first off, congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
Absolutely great fun. I watched it the other day. It was so much fun.
Oh, thank you.
I know that you did Paranorman before this, and I read that it was very much based on kind of you and everything else. I mean, how close was this based on you, or was this something of more of a fantasy, if you like?
I mean, I'd like to say predominantly a fantasy, but I think there's definitely me in there. It has been noted that both Lionel and Mr. Link remind people of me. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think anytime you write something, you put a lot of yourself in there. But certainly not to the extent that Paranorman was.
Yeah. I mean, the animation in this is just incredible. I mean, I remember seeing Paranorman and then obviously Kubo, which is just extraordinary. And you're working with extraordinary talents and everything else. I mean, how difficult is it to make something like this? Because I can imagine it's a lot of work, but then some on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, no movie is easy. And animated movies, I think, are that much more difficult because they're so slow. The process is so slow. Stop motion brings its own unique challenges because it is practical. Everything is built. This was a really difficult one because the scope and scale of it are really big for a stop motion movie. We cover a lot of the globe, and all of that needs building. Even when we've got like digital elements, we always inform that with miniature builds, or so everything is created physically by people, and that's not easy.
I remember seeing Monsters Inc. for the first time, and Pixar doing the hair on Sully, and you have a similar thing with Link in this. I mean, how difficult was it to bring this furry creature to life and have it look not realistic, I guess, because it's animated, but to look as realistic as possible?
Well, I think it has to look realistic within its own world, and that was a choice I made pretty early on. It's a character that's covered in hair, and I didn't want it to look like real hair. I didn't want it to look like, there's a school of stop motion that kind of goes the taxidermy route, where it looks like a real creature, and you tend to see the animator's fingerprints on it. But because the look of the movie was so stylized, the characters in particular, I wanted to go for hair that felt stylized. That's why Link's got that kind of leaf-like tufting. And in the end, we sculpted that, and that was created out of silicon. Not that made it any easier. It's still incredibly difficult. And I think Link is probably the most complicated puppet that we've ever made at the studio because of all that.
What was kind of the genesis for the story? I mean, was this something that you came up with a long time ago, or was this something that after you did Paranorman and worked on Kubo and everything else that this idea kind of gestated, if you like?
It started a long time ago, and I've got a bunch of ideas that I just kind of dip into whenever I have the opportunity. And this was something, again, very much informed by my childhood, or at least the stuff that I used to love when I was a kid, actually still love now. So Indiana Jones, Sherlock Holmes, Ray Harryhausen creatures, all kind of thrown in together and stirred up. And I think the reason that they came up now was because in the past, I don't think we would have been able to make this movie because of its size, but because of the last 4 movies that we've made and the innovations that we've made, it seemed like now, if I'm going to do it, now's the time.
How involved are Laika in the sense of, did you take the project to them, or was it that you spoke to, I know that you're obviously friends with Travis and everything else. I mean, was it kind of conversations, or was it something that you took to them and said, hey, I have this idea, would you guys be interested?
It was, I wanted him to make his mind up for himself. I didn't want to pitch something to him. And he said, what do you want to do next after Paranorman? And I just kind of gave him 3 scripts where I'd written the first act of each. And I just said, read them, because I assumed he had all the time in the world on his hands. And I just said, you decide, because I liked all of them. I did have a favourite. Fortunately, it was this. And he went for the same one. And I think it was because it felt very different from what we'd done before. And I think that's what was interesting to him. And to me, it was like creatively, where can we go next with the studio that doesn't feel like we're repeating ourselves?
What was it about the kind of Indiana Jones and the Sherlock Holmes? What do you think it is about those stories that kind of resonated with you, but will resonate with because I guess you've got such a broad audience with this, from young to old.
Yeah, hopefully. I think, it's that kind of ripping yarn, the old adventure stories. I wanted to make an adventure movie with big action set pieces, that kind of Spielbergian fun action. Sherlock Holmes, I just love the setting. I love the Victorian time. So compelling, and it was a time that seemed right for this story because it was a time when the world was just opening up for the first time. I think now we know everything at all times. We have access to information at all times, but then the world was still a mystery, and that seemed right for like this voyage of exploration.
I sensed a lot of one of my favourite films in this movie, and forgive me if this is wrong, which is Planes, Trains and Automobiles.
Yes!
Which is because of the two guys kind of thrust together, trying to get from point A to point B, but obviously in between you've got all of this amazing
I'm so pleased that you got that.
It was so, and obviously, and no disrespect to John Candy, but Link kind of looks kind of like John Candy in a way. But was that another one? Because as soon as I watched it with the comedy and everything else, with everything else going on, at the core, it was kind of the same idea of this unlikely friendship, if you like.
Yeah, an odd couple. And I think that was definitely an influence. In fact, at the very beginning when I was talking about it to people, I would describe it as Indiana Jones meets Sherlock Holmes meets Planes, Trains and Automobiles. So you're spot on there. And I think that John Candy character works so well as this buddy movie because his personality was so, warm and kind of naive and soft, and that works so well with Steve Martin physically as well. John Candy's all huggable curves and I don't know I can't remember the characters' names.
Neil Page and Del Griffith.
That's it. Yeah, but he was kind of spiky, and I wanted to get that with these two characters as well.
Yeah, he definitely did that. Definitely got a sense of that. So I'm delighted with that.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey